Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 20. This is One Day Today. So glad to have you joining us. We had an amazing conversation on Tuesday, and today will be no exception. We have two incredible guests. I'm really excited to hear them share. It's been quite a week, quite a month, quite a year. I mean, time is the experience of time for me personally has been. I forget what day, what week it is, but there's a lot of things brewing in the world. Obviously with the COVID, the COVID craziness, but also with what we're experiencing, and with coming to a head with the injustice of George Floyd, and the conversations that are happening in the world and in the U.S. I feel we're at a turning. There is a turning point. I feel there are conversations that wouldn't have happened if COVID hadn't opened up this whole Pandora's box of us coming back to our hearts. Like we in COVID, I feel like it's kind of pointed us to what's important. We're all forced to kind of look in the mirror, and we're seeing ourselves, and we're seeing the world, and just kind of seeing like, how did we get here? Like how did this happen? How are we all here? And I think that's what I see as the collateral beauty is these conversations that are having that I see wouldn't have happened without this opening in the world. And I think it's a very amazing time, an interesting time to be alive. And I think it's beautiful, the people who are contributing to something bigger than themselves. And that's really why we're doing the stage. We could easily focus on the scary things, the things that are there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, but we are highlighting and focusing on people who are up to things bigger than themselves, people who are just extraordinary. And I'm really excited to have our guest today. I'm going to welcome our co-host, Matthew. Matthew, how's it going today?
A lot. I can say good, and that is a true statement. Overall, yeah, I do feel pretty good, but also there's just so much. Like it's there's a lot of emotions present: anger, frustration,
Mhm.
fear, um, and just being with them all as best I can without shutting down has been really a beautiful challenge. Like it's one thing that's come up on the show quite a bit is leaning into the pain, choosing to embrace the pain, accept things exactly the way they are right now, because there is no change in them. This is what's happening. This is what is. And then from that place of embracing the pain, making the best of it. What is the best, most loving, beautifying action that can be taken from my perspective in every moment going forward. And I love that phrase, collateral beauty. Like, I've you've used it a couple times now, and I keep coming back to it. Like, it's such a great little turn of phrase, and it really points to me at least, all the little things that come out of tragedy,
Mhm.
all the opportunities that are available now that were not available before because tragedy happened.
Mhm.
And one of those things, the most present one for me actually is accountability at this moment. Like
Mhm.
taking accountability for not only my actions, but my inactions. Like every moment that there was an opportunity to speak up and I didn't take it. And that's something that I felt really strongly about for a while, but it's really stepped up in the last few days with the protest, and not just holding myself accountable, but in holding myself accountable, that puts me in a position where I can hold others to account as well, and including our leaders. And so that's something that I've really been looking at and playing with, and it's something that I feel like I'm going to continue inviting a lot more of going forward.
Absolutely. No, yeah. Collateral beauty. Tragedy has a power to really open up something we didn't see before, and see things differently. And I mean, there's so many examples of this in my life, but just when society as a whole is facing this big, uncertainty, it forces us to look at things differently. And there are beautiful things that we didn't even know were possible that can happen when we can face our fear and, just see what we weren't seeing before. So what opens up with this new situation that we weren't expecting. And I think there's so much that's why I see there's never been a bigger opening for connection, for community, for collaboration than there is right now in the world. And that's why this feels more important than ever. Having the stage and this movement is, we're raising the voices of people who have faced themselves and are, just showing up as something amazing and something beautiful to contribute to us all. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our first guest. We have Cherlyn Decker joining us. Hi, Cherlyn.
Hi, Abram, Matt. So good to be here with you.
Oh, we are so happy to have you. Well, I am just going to let you have at it, Cherlyn. I'm just going to say, Cherlyn, take the stage. The stage is yours.
Poof. It was gone. My phone rang and it was my boss. I'm sorry, Cherlyn, but your position has been eliminated. I collapsed in the chair in my office, heavy, salty tears streaking mascara down my face. And I buried my head in my hands. And I said, poof, it's gone. That day, all hell broke loose. As the biggest trial my life, my marriage, my family had ever faced had just hit. Now what? How will we get through this? How will we pay the bills? Is it going to be okay? How do I know it's going to be okay? That day, I was paralyzed by my circumstances, frozen with fear and filled with endless questions. That day, I lost a grip on all I was juggling. I lost who I was, and my life and my finances became a hot mess. And I realized that climbing that corporate ladder was not what my life was about. Not anymore. And over the next 5 years, everything changed. Where I lived, where I worked, who I hung out with, what I thought about myself, what I believed about God, even how I prayed, it all changed. And now things are different. Instead of being paralyzed by my circumstances, I'm equipped to face anything that comes my way. Instead of being frozen with fear, I have an unshakable faith. Instead of being filled with endless questions, I have answers, or I know where to get them. Maybe for you, it wasn't a job loss. Maybe it was this pandemic. Maybe it were these protests or riots. Maybe it was something else. My story is not unique at all. We are all hit by trials. The difference is, what do we do with them? I believe one day we can all turn our trials into triumph because I've done it. I'm so thankful to be here today. I thank you, Abram and Matt, for having me. You have planned an amazing summit. You are delivering something tangible for community that we can all feel, and I honor you for it. I've come out of the other side of my mess, a warrior. And through it, I've discovered how to triumph, how to fight back, how to overcome, how to break through the chaos that was spinning in my life. And looking back, being laid off was one of the best things that ever happened to me, to my family. For the past 15 years, I've helped hundreds of people, just like you, not only survive the trials of life, but use them, learn from them, and get breakthrough. Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to share with you how to unleash your roar. Yes, roar, because you can stop the chaos that's spinning in your life, and you can make sure it doesn't come back. And you do it by learning this roar framework. The R stands for respond. First, we have to know how to respond. O stands for overcome. We have to learn how to overcome the obstacles. Third, we apply what we've learned from past seasons. And the last R is we reveal our story to others. So let's start with that first R, respond. We know how we want to respond. We want to scream. We want to get angry. We want to get all mouthy and negative. We want to grumble and complain. We want to be afraid, worried, anxious. And before we know it, we're miserable. Proverbs tells us the tongue either speaks life or death. The Apostle Paul cautions us in Philippians to not grumble or complain, but it's so easy to get caught in that trap and get those frustrations off of our chest. But those words don't help our circumstances at all. Paul tells us again in Philippians 4:6 not to be anxious. And then Jesus tells us not to worry, yet we get nervous. We look at what's happening and we fear the worst. We see scary outcomes and we wrestle with what if? So instead of responding out of anger or worry or anxiety, instead of getting all negative or grumbling and complaining, how do we respond? I've got tons to say about it in my 6-week program, but today I want to focus on something that will cause our circumstances to change. What is it? It's finding what the Word of God says. Because when you find God's promises and what He says about us and our problems, it will bring power into the circumstances. Because until we find what He says, we speak with no power. Let me say that again. Until we find what the Word of God says, we speak with no power. But when we know what the Word says, then we can declare it. So take what's happened recently. And we've seen all of these riots all over the place. And I woke up that morning and I was like, God, what would you have me say? And He brought me to a verse that talked about peace. And that's all I did all day was just declare peace. Peace over my town, peace over my state, peace over my nation. Because you can say whatever you want to your circumstances. You can get all mouthy and negative, or you can choose to give your words the power to change them. So when you get off this broadcast today, pull out your Bible, dust it off, find a promise about what's going on in your life right now, and begin speaking it out loud. Or if you'd like, Matt and Abram have allowed me to share with you the 5 declarations that I use that gave power to my prayers. It changed everything for me. Because when I felt like my prayers were bouncing off the ceiling and I wondered, God, where are you? And do you even hear me? These declarations gave me the lifeline I needed when I didn't know how to pray. Because when we know what God says about our circumstances and we declare those things out loud, it can change our circumstances. The second letter of roars, O, overcoming obstacles. There was this time when I was a teenager and I was driving down this neighborhood road and I hit a pothole and it flattened both tires on the same side of the car. We can see the potholes coming if we know what to look for. When we're first learning to drive, we're taught about those hazards, things like potholes, because we want to avoid them. Yet when it comes to this walk of life, we don't know what to look for. We can't overcome until we see what's coming at us. We get so caught up in the consequences of flat tires that we don't look at what happened. How did I get here? In Ephesians chapter 6, Paul tells us we can extinguish all the flaming arrows that are coming at us. Flaming arrows were first used in the 9th century, and they required the archer to get close to the target, or the arrows would burn out as they flew through the air. So the key thing to remember when it comes to our obstacles, these arrows, these potholes, is we can see them coming if we know what to look for. Traps for all of us are different. They can be bitterness, offense, unforgiveness, fear, frustration, pride, jealousy, anger. The list goes on and on. Let me tell you about Karen. She was in my coaching program and she was so frustrated with her boss. She felt he had set her up. He asked her to do something. And when he didn't get what he wanted, he was mad at her for not delivering on his expectations. But he asked her over text message. He didn't call. He didn't stop by the office. He sent her a vague text. But if it was important, why didn't he say what he wanted? She and I were over a video conference, and so I could see she was very irritated. And my question caught her off guard. I said, "Where did you get caught? Where was the trap?" Because her trap was camouflaged. She started to blame others, her boss. And then she pointed the finger back at herself and heaped on guilt and all kinds of shame. And in that blame and shame, she didn't see how she got in the trap in the first place. But if we spot the trap, then we can see it and we can avoid falling for it again. And that's what happened for Karen. The next time her boss did the exact same thing, she recognized it and avoided the trap. You see, it's once we spot the traps, it's once we see the obstacles that are in our way that we can actually be an overcomer. Then we are faced with a choice. We get to choose whether we're going to be a victim or whether we're going to be victorious. Are we going to let our obstacles bully us with shame and guilt, or are we going to learn from our lessons? Are we going to sit in our pit, or are we going to find a shovel and dig our way out? You can start right now. You get to decide, how do you want to respond when these obstacles show up? Then over the next week, take some time to think about those obstacles you faced. Ask yourself, where were the traps? Where do you see them in hindsight? Now let's move to the A. The A stands for apply what we've learned from previous seasons. We have to look at our trials differently because inside is a story, and that story unlocks powerful keys of breakthrough. Our trials should strengthen us, but instead, we often beat ourselves up with thoughts and feelings which bubble up to the surface. This may not be new to you. Sometimes our thoughts and our feelings are not true. Sometimes they lie. Sometimes we hear the whisper of things that are not true about us or someone else, and it gets us to doubt, to wonder, to question until we believe the lie. We need to take those thoughts captive. Philippians 4:8 says to think on whatever is true. This means we have another choice. We have control over what we think, what we feel, and we can filter them out as soon as they come in and filter them to know against what is we know to be true. We have a choice. We can recognize the false thoughts and beliefs and choose to do something different, or we can choose to do nothing. The last is the letter R, reveal your story for others. And this is what Abram and Matt are doing so beautifully. What we don't realize is when we triumph over our story, triumph over our trials, our story says it's possible. And if it happened for me and it happened for you, it can happen for someone else, because our stories are there to help other people find their breakthrough too. And if our story can do that, then we have a responsibility to share it. You can walk away from here today wondering how you can turn your trials into triumph. And I want to share those declarations with you. You can use the link, SherilynDecker/welcome-1-day. When I first started sharing these, I gave them with friends and family. And my mother-in-law said they were awkward at first, but they became easier. And now she prays them over others. When we do something new for the first time, it is awkward. But as we do new things more often, we get better at it. Speaking over our circumstances brings God's power to change them. Let me put these declarations in your hands so you can be prepared for future storms. Because picture a day when you are not rattled by bad news because you know how to handle it. You're empowered for what comes next. Picture a day when your friend says you've helped them because you are equipped. Picture a day when you are living at peace and you carry a confidence and strength that cannot be shaken. You know it's going to be okay because you've seen it. Let's make that day a reality and get those declarations. I'll leave you with this. At the beginning of my talk, I told you about my layoff. 1 year later, when my husband and I moved to Colorado, we were determined to do things different, to live on just his income. Then his pay was cut. What froze us before did not freeze us again. Instead of chaos, I felt peace. Instead of collapsing in my chair in a puddle of tears, I laid on my couch and I took a nap. Yes, a nap. We had learned from our trial. We had broken through once, and we knew it would happen again, and it did. And I stand here as an overcomer because this ROAR framework works. I've turned my trials into triumph, and now you can join the journey and do it too.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sherilyn, your story, and so inspiring. There's so many things that really, came in my just hearing you speak, and I think you kind of brought up a lot of things that that resonate with me, but I'm present to, it's this dance we have with chaos and order. There's always something that will catch us off guard, catch us by surprise. There's always some breakdown, some flat tire, but it's usually those breakdowns that lead to a breakthrough that opens up an entire new world of being empowered in our own authentic being, like who we really are. And it's, I was having a talk with a dear friend of mine, and we were talking about how most of the time, we always have plans and we have goals, and everyone has things that they seek to do with their life and with their time. And it's usually the things that happen, it's usually things that happen along that path towards our goals, that some tragedy happens, something happens that we don't expect, that opens up a door that changes the course of everything. And it's like, it's never what we plan on that has the biggest impact in our life. It's always the things that we don't. It's always the chaos we weren't expecting. It's like, somebody dies or somebody gets sick or something happens. And it's when those unexpected things happen, when we can find our own strength despite the outside world feels like it's pulling us down. Our power comes from being able to not only deal with those situations, but actually powerfully, we could actually step into chaos and bring our own peace to it. And I think I acknowledge you for your strength and your courage that when you speak, you have such a calm, just confidence that it's refreshing just hearing you speak about your story. And I'm curious, so at what point did you discover that a breakdown or chaos was something that was powerful for you as a tool to overcome and come out stronger on the other side?
Well, you realize you're forged in the fire and your character is better for it. And it was a series of one thing after another. I mean, the layoff came the year after I lost my dad to cancer. After the layoff, it was one thing after another, and after another. And you finally realize, I don't want to spin like this anymore. You've got to be able to figure out, how do you navigate through this? Because I can promise you, none of us are promised that we will have a life free of trial. But I can tell you, how we get through one is an indicator of how we will get through another one, unless something changes. So we can continue to go through the same things over and over and over again until something shifts and we behave differently. And then, like you said, it opens up a door to the next path. I like to tell my clients that their struggle could be their source of strength, which propels them into their purpose.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's that learning to recognize the patterns, right?
Yes.
That is something that has been very relevant in my life as well. Like just recognizing, even though the situation itself may be different, how I got into the situation and how I'm reacting to it, there's almost always a common thread if I actually start looking back at the history and paying attention to what was happening. And I really appreciated that. Like that, the potholes analogy is one I have not heard before. And I like that was because you can, like, once you start really paying attention, I can see them, and they tend to be moments where someone says something that I have traditionally reacted to out of fear or anger in the past. And as soon as I recognize what I'm actually reacting to, which rarely has actually, never has it had anything to do with what they're saying and what they are. It's always something about my story, like something I learned that I am accepting as true for myself. As soon as I recognize that and acknowledge the lie and move on, the potholes, like, I can just swerve right around them again.
Yeah, you said it so eloquently before when you talked about how we get to be authentic with our story, authentic with who we are. And it's brave to have to look back at our story, look back at our life and go mining for treasure. And that, I think we don't really sit with stuff very well. to kind of say, okay, there's got to be something in here that I can learn from. And you touched on it, that our buttons that are pushed are our woundings.
Mm-hmm.
Our buttons that are pushed are our places of weakness. There's a great scene in the movie Elf where he pushes the entire buttons on the elevator, and there's because he's so excited to go see his dad, right? Right? You can picture it, right? And then there's this poor guy who has to ride the elevator on every single one of those floors, and you know he's going to the top, but he doesn't react. He doesn't react. And the beautiful thing about all that is we have a choice. We can get to a place, Abram, we were talking before about how healing comes in layers. We can get to a place where we have gone through so many layers of our healing in that area that it doesn't bother us anymore. Those buttons, no matter how much you try to push them, aren't going to light up on my elevator. And that's the beautiful place that I know that one day we can all get to, when your buttons and my buttons aren't pushed by each other anymore.
Beautifully said. That's powerful. There's so much you said there. For me, it's like back to the same thing you're saying about, the breakdowns are ultimately a breakthrough in the making. And it's like when we are able to be in a space where our buttons don't get pressed, it's like we can, back to the Bible, you're saying, it's like we can slay that Goliath, we can slay that dragon, whatever. It's like if we just always were safe, we had no obstacle. If we were just at home and there was nothing to do and there was no obstacle, like there would be no opportunity. And it's like, it's almost the chaos in our life is almost for the human experience. It's like the chaos in our life is something that fuels the things that we create, the beautiful things that we can create. And it's like when we can actually have a relationship with the present moment and our awareness with ourself and what's going on inside us, we can beautiful things can happen because we can be in the space of chaos, but our internal peace is not brought down. And we can there's just so many amazing things that can happen when we are actually showing up and not stuck in the survival and not stuck in fear, but stuck in just this is what's happening, but there's a new possibility and something it's like almost ask God, ask whoever you pray to or don't pray to, ask the universe. So everyone has a different word that they convey for that with themselves. But it's like, what is it that I can learn from this? What is it that I don't see? And there's something beautiful that can come out of being in chaos, that we can create order and beauty out of that, something that we didn't expect. I think it's so amazing. I have a question I'd like to ask you, cherlyn, because you said the term a couple times in your share, but what does one day mean to you?
One day means there's hope. One day means we can get to a place where our healing is complete. One day means we can get to a place where we can all be brothers and sisters. And I can love you in all of your mess. And you can love me in all of my mess, knowing that we're all in process. We're all imperfect. And I can give you grace for your mistakes. And you can give me grace while I'm in the middle of mine. And we can love each other through it without me judging you and your choices, because I might have done things different. I can really just extend that hope that one day things will be different.
I love it.
Doing that, you're making it happen right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for who you're being, and it's such an inspirational story. I'm very inspired by just who you are and just what you have to share with us. I really appreciate you taking time to share with us, and I hope you'll come back and share with us again soon.
I would love that. You guys have created such a format that's beautiful, and there's a gift that you're bringing people in this time to really come face to face with their stuff and providing insight and resources and individuals who can help them make that leap into the future is just beautiful, and I want to honor you.
Thank you so much, cherlyn. Thank you for sharing, and thank you all for tuning in with us. We want to invite you and encourage you to share share who you are on the stage. You know, what is your unique gift, your unique contribution, gift, talent, passion? What do you have that, you know, we could learn from? What is something you faced and you've overcome that you not only made it on the other side, but you have something that you could help someone who's dealing with the same thing? And we're like, what do you have to bring to our picnic where everybody's invited and everyone has something to share, and everyone has a unique superpower that they have to contribute to us all? We want to invite and encourage you. You see a link at the bottom of the screen for our website, but this is an open invitation. And if there's just a little bit of maybe, we encourage you to follow that intuition, because there's something beautiful on the other side, especially if you're afraid to share. Like I know I was, and I got more than I've expected just by continuing to be sharing. But that's why we're here. And this is our mission at One Day. You know, it's bringing you and I and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And that's why we're here. That's what this space is for. I'd like to now invite our next guest to join us. We have Dr. Debra Muth. Hi, Debra. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. Cherlyn, that was amazing. Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
happy
Debra.
to have you. Yeah, well, I'm just going to let you have at it now, too. Debra, the stage is yours.
It was quite an accomplishment when I graduated with a PhD, because it wasn't too many years before that I stood on my high school steps and my principal came up to me and said, "Hey, meet me in my office. I've got your dropout papers for you. Go ahead and drop out just like all your other friends have done, because that's all you're going to be." At that moment, being the rebel child that I was and still am today, I looked at him, laughed, and said, "No, I don't think I'll give you that pleasure." And I walked away and went on to class. I wasn't a great student back then. I was really more interested in partying, having fun, skipping school. It wasn't until I left school that I realized I wasn't as dumb as I thought I was, and I really wanted to make a contribution to the world. And so I set out in school and I studied multiple things before I landed on what I felt was really my passion and really my gift to give to the world. And it started out in nursing. And from nursing, it launched to naturopathic medicine. And from naturopathic medicine, it went to herbal medicine. And I became this perpetual student where I just really couldn't stop learning. I just kept going and going. And before I knew it, 17 years later, I had multiple master's degrees, a PhD, multiple other degrees, and I just couldn't stop because I loved it so much. And I kept applying it so that I could help my clients get better and better and better. When I became that PhD, I wondered, where would I practice? Because traditional medicine's not going to want me. And after everything I learned, I wasn't a good fit for them either anymore, because I didn't want to get my hand slapped, but I couldn't not speak the truth of what I had learned. So I set out and found a practice that took me under their wing. And that day was so amazing. I got to learn from some of the innovators who had been doing this since the 70s. And I didn't think anybody was doing it. I thought it was all new. And my practice began to grow rather quickly. And I kept learning and being so humble to the people that were willing to teach me. And then one day, and it actually wasn't one day, it was multiple days, after our senior partner retired, the co-partner and I found ourselves just not getting along. And we weren't mean to one another, but it was very passive-aggressive behavior. I didn't see it at first, but I started to realize every time I'd walk into our office, there'd be a comment about, "Oh, so now you think you're this. Now you're an oncologist. Why is that doctor seeing you and not me? You're not a real doctor." And this went on for quite a few years, 4 or 5 years, and I continued to practice with him until one day I said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." And I went to my husband and said, "I don't know what to do. I can't do this anymore, but I can't leave my patients. I can't walk away from them." And my husband looked at me and said, "Deb, it's a no-brainer. You've built his practice from scratch. Build your own." And it took me about 6 months to sit with that idea, because all of those fears and tribulations and those things that tell us we can't do that. What if I don't make any money? What if my patients don't follow me? What if the insurance companies don't take me? What if we lose everything we've had? I'm the sole proprietor in this family. I can't do this. And one day my husband looked at me and he said, "Are you crazy? You have done this for all these years in this practice. What makes you think people won't follow you?" And so I took that leap of faith that day. And within 6 weeks, I had opened my own practice. I had done everything from scratch, and I didn't really know much about business. And guess what? My patients followed me, and more came and more came. And I had this grandiose idea that I wanted to put like-minded practitioners under the same roof so we could share our knowledge base and we could share our clients so our clients could get the best help that they deserved. And they could do it at an affordable price. I did that during the last recession. Fast forward a year. So 2010, I opened my practice. 2011, I had more patients than I know what to do with. I was working from 7 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, 4 days a week in the practice, and then continued to go home for 3 days on the weekends and continue to clean up all the things that I didn't get done during the week so my patients could get the care that they needed. I was looking for other practitioners at that point. I had 3 other practitioners that worked with me, but I needed somebody who could be me. I needed a clone, and there wasn't anyone that I could find. And then one day, this guardian angel dropped into my office, and she's now been with me 5 years, and she's my clone, and it's amazing. And I've taught her the way my other partners taught me, but I taught her with respect and honor and dignity, and encouraged her to know that she could do what she thought she couldn't do, just like I did. So now we here are all these years later, and it sounds like it was amazing, but there were days it was hell. There were days I'd cry to get up in the morning and said, I can't do this anymore. I can't work like this anymore. We grew a practice from 1,200 clients to 8,500 clients as of today, and there's only 3 practitioners with us right now. I'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on masterminds and coaching programs to teach me how to grow the practice and manage the practice and elevate the practice and sell the practice, because I was ready to walk away and be done about 4 years ago because I couldn't do it anymore. I had no time for my family, no time for my children, no time for my husband. And all I did was work. And I felt like my life was wasting away. And then the ultimate moments come. I was in a car accident. I hit the windshield. I was lucky to be alive with my family. I sustained the only injury in the accident, and it was a bad foot. I tore all the ligaments in my ankle, and I had a concussion, but everyone else around me was healthy, safe. I am smart enough to look at that moment and say that was a grace from my higher power, from the universe, from God, whatever we want to call that. But that was my wake-up call at that moment to say, you have to do something differently. And I set out to do that. More masterminds, more coaching programs, more support. And it didn't get better. It got worse. So I cut back my schedule. I stopped being in the office so much to reduce the stress. And things got worse at the office, like they do when the owner's not there. And then it was a year ago. One of my best friends passed away from ovarian cancer. 2 months earlier, my best friend, I had to diagnose with endometrial stage 4 cancer. 2 months after that, I'm in the airport waiting to fly out to Spain, and I had to call my only other best friend and tell her, it looks like you have ovarian cancer. I went to Spain for 2 weeks, studied with a shaman, learned about women's issues, cried and yelled with 30 other women to get out what we needed to get out. And I came back a completely different woman. I came back being the friend that I should have been all along, the wife I should have been, the mother I've always wanted to be. And I started to become the boss that I needed to be, and included being the practitioner that I started out being 20 years ago. It was not easy. It was hell this last year. My best friend that passed away in June last year left a hole that was so difficult to see because I didn't have the time to be with her. I didn't have the time to help her. My second best friend, who I diagnosed Memorial Day last year, passed away 2 days before Memorial Day this year. She and I have been friends for 17 years. We've talked every single day for 17 years. That has left an impact on my life like nothing has ever left in my life before. I've lost people in my life. I lost my dad 16 years ago. This was different. She was only 3 years older than me. What would I do without that best friend? Who was I going to call? Who was I going to talk to? But what I learned during this year is it's not about the crap that's in our life. It's not about who did us wrong. It's not about the hurt. It's not about the anger. It's about how we show up for one another. It's about the impact we leave every single day in our lives. So what does that one day look like today? Looks very different than it did a year ago. It looks very different than it did 10 years ago. That one day for me means that one day can change everything. That one day is a gift that you get the luxury of having every time you take a breath in the morning, because you don't know that you're going to have that breath in the afternoon. You don't know what phone call you're going to get to say, I maybe have 6 months, I maybe have a year, or maybe you don't have any time with that person anymore. So all of the things that we do and all of the things that we earn and grow and build and achieve and strive for in that last moment really don't mean a lot. They don't mean much. But what does mean something is on that last day when you take that breath, what do people remember about you? What do they say? Do they say, wow, that person was great. Did you see all the things they owned? They had 5 cars and 3 houses and a jet, or they climbed the corporate ladder. Or do they say, that person, you were there. You gave us your all. You shared your life with us. You shared your knowledge, your experience, your gifts. You shared those difficult moments with us. You've held my hand when it was hard. You cried with me when I needed you to. And you were just there listening to me when you needed me to. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy life? Did you experience? Did you grow? Or were you that crabby, complaining person that nobody wanted to be around? Are you the person that everybody dodged at the office? Or you are the one that brings everyone together and shares the difficult times and lifts them up and makes their life meaningful and shows them the amazing things they have in this life and reminds them of what they need to be on this earth for? Or do you add to the chaos? Do you add to the stress? Do you add to those difficult times? Or do you bring light and love and conviction every single day that you're here in this world? We have a choice. We all have it. Every day we have the choice. Because trust me when I say, every day for the last year, I had to choose showing up for my best friend, being there, loving her unconditionally, holding her hand, reliving her life, telling her what she has meant to so many other people. And I could have been that person that kept saying, gee, this really sucks. God, this really is hard. It's hard for me. What am I going to do without you? But it's not about me. It's about her. It's about the world. It's about the impact we leave to make everyone's life better today than it was tomorrow. So if you have that one day, what does your one day look like? Does your one day going to be the day that you make everyone miserable? Or are you going to be the one day that everybody loves your shining light because you made the difference. You spoke up, you shared, you loved, and you were just there in all your grace, in all your misery, in all the difficult times. You were there. You get to choose. I chose. It wasn't easy. It was hard. I don't know that I would have chose if my friends wouldn't have all been diagnosed with a similar diagnosis. I don't know that I would have chose if I didn't fly off to Spain and lock myself away for 10 days. I'm grateful I chose, and I'm grateful for the person that I am today. And I love helping others, other practitioners, find their glory and their love again. And I love helping them build the business that they want without it swallowing them up like it did for me. It's grace, people. It's one day at a time, but you choose every day. Thanks, Abraham. Thank you. You guys have made this amazing, and I'm so grateful for the platform that you've given us.
Thank you so much for sharing, Debra. Thank you. There's so much in your story. It's amazing. I acknowledge your courage and, for all you've been through. And not only have you come through all of that on the other side, but you're here sharing this message of inspiration, of hope for us all to be encouraged and to be lifted up. And I think it's a beautiful thing. We're always more better off when we have people like yourself that is just so selfless to, contribute you use your own struggle, your own triumphing through your own pain to help others. And I think that's so beautiful. So just thank you, first of all, for just sharing that. That's so it's very encouraging hearing you speak. So what?
Thank you. And I want to thank Matthew for giving us the challenge before we started today to just say, just let it go, let it be whatever it is. So yeah, not planned. It all just came out because of his challenge. So thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. There's so much, there are so many questions that come out of that I would want to ask. And actually, before I even ask a question, Abram's usually the one that shares the quotes. But there's one that really was present for me when you were speaking, especially towards the end, about what is it that, when we look back at our lives, what is it that really stands out? Is it, did we have all the money, or is it that we were there for people? Did we love more? Did we connect more? And Herman Melville, he wrote with Moby Dick, it wasn't a man looking for this white whale in the ocean. It was a man looking for his lost soul. And there's one particular quote where he's talking, and this is Captain Ahab, and he's in this place where he is just absolutely terrified by the ocean, but so enthralled by it at the same time. And as for the appalling oceans that surround this verdant land, so in the soul of man there lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horrors of the half-known life. And that's really what you were talking about. Like everything, everything you did before, all the practice, all of that, it was beautiful, it was lovely, but it was a half-lived life. And now it feels like you're there, you're fully present, you're absolutely living to your fullest. And that is beautiful, like seeing that shift. And I find it absolutely hilarious and brilliant and just poignant that it happened through a shaman. Shamanism is a path that I've walked for quite a while. I don't truly believe it, but it has been a model that has really taught me a lot about the world and about myself. And it's challenged me to be bigger than anything I ever thought I could be. There's one big question that I feel like applies not just to this conversation, but to the world at large in all of this. And it's the possibilities or the self-limiting factors of our own beliefs. Like as a medical doctor, right, with this practice, How many examples have you seen of people who have literally thought themselves sick?
Mm.
And from the shamanistic perspective, like what can you bring to that now to bring them out of that self-deception?
That is a great question. So my practice primarily over the years has been with women. And I can't tell you how many number of women that I have seen in my office, sick, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, yada, yada, we go on. And they get out of a bad relationship and suddenly they're healthy. Suddenly they're better. They don't have the symptoms anymore. And what's been more interesting to me is as they repeat their bad relationship habits, within a year, they're all sick again. 95% of them. And so it begs us to understand what our psyche, what our lifestyle, what things that we don't clear from us make us internally sick, but we don't realize it or recognize it at the time. It's very large. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that question comes. So I had a conversation with an anesthesiologist just the other day, and we had a conversation around a lot of this. And one of the things he said was, asked him, where does all this pushback come from the medical community about, the placebo effect, and why is this not talked about more? And he said, it's not that it's not talked about in the medical community. Like, we recognize it, we see it every single day. It's that, like, if we try to tell the parent of a 5-year-old kid that that kid's stomach pain is because they're depressed, the parents are screaming at us, and like, so
yeah.
Have you found ways to really approach people about things like this?
Yeah, you definitely have to be very gentle with it. And I find that if you can share a story on how your life was impacted by similar things, you're not putting it on them that it's their fault or that they're doing something on purpose. It's all in our subconscious mind that we do this. It's not consciously that we're making ourselves sick, but it also means that we haven't dealt with certain things in our lives. And sometimes it's hard. I mean, it's hard to deal with a 30-year marriage that's been bad for 20 years and you're solely dependent on that person financially. And then we say the only way you're going to get healthy is if we get you out of this marriage. And now you're talking about upheaving the whole world that this person knows. It can be a very significant challenge to do that. But building the support and helping them along the way to find ways to do it safely, and so that they're not giving up absolutely everything and living in poverty, that's how we make people better. But sometimes you have to go all the way back to their childhood and deal with things that they haven't dealt with in childhood. And because it's on that subconscious layer, that's where we find shamanism and healing from that aspect really works well, because we don't necessarily have to go through all of that and bring it back to the surface for them. We can heal it on a cellular level from that sensual place or from that vibrant place, instead of them having to rehash everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Debra, for just sharing your story and your wisdom. It's been so powerful. Like, you just both you and I think this is a good time to bring in cherlyn. I want to ask you. You kind of brushed on this, Debra. I'll just because I asked cherlyn, but I'll ask you real quick. What does one day mean to you? You talked about it a lot, but what does it mean?
Yeah. So one day to me means a gift every single day that I take a breath. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on this earth, but it also means that every day I need to give back to the world. I need to give back to honor our society, to the people that we come in contact with every day. And it's my job and my responsibility and my blessing to be able to give back to the world in a positive fashion and not make it more negative and more difficult than it already is every day.
Beautiful. Really. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Cherlyn, I would love to bring you into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, Debra, you've just got such a gift, and to know that we serve people in a similar way of dealing with some of the brokenness that comes from negativity, and some of that we bring on ourselves, and some of that is our environment. And so I love the discussion you guys have had around how just removing people from bad relationships can sometimes bring the healing that they need if they have the courage to do it. And I think that's part of it, is we all are given the choice of what are we going to do? We get to choose to stay in our mess, or we get to choose to climb out of it. And there's all kinds of hands extended. There's Debra's hand, there's my hand, there's all kinds of hands from the previous videos that you guys have released, that there are hands that are ready to pull people out of it if they will just grab them.
Yeah. So well said, Cherlyn. I mean, I think that's the hardest part, is you feel so alone when you're in this place that you don't think that anybody can understand or know what you're going through. And how do you share with them that you're in this place and not have them look down on you? And so I think it's really important for people to know that they're not alone, and there's those of us who've been through it that are willing to help.
And that's exactly why this format is so helpful, because it lets us share our story. Because you could go into a doctor's office and just because you found them in the phone book and not know whether they're a good fit. But once you know that there's a deeper, not necessarily a why, but a deeper purpose and passion behind that reason of why we've chosen to help people the way that we have, it makes people see, oh, she's a woman just like me. She struggles with that just like me. It helps us see each other as, just fellow sojourners who are just a few steps ahead of where someone else is. And that's humbling.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's something that we've been playing with, Abram and I, working on establishing a grant and a few other things for some colleges around the country. And part of the grant is the values that we intend to hold and be. And they're not finalized yet. We're still playing with them, but they're also the same as the ones we're playing with on the campaign that I'm working on as well, which is kind of hilarious and awesome. But it's not to act with gratitude, but to be gratitude, not to act with integrity, but to be integrity, humility, transparency, and accountability. And when I hold the space of those values, when I hold that space of love and non-judgment, and can hear anything, no matter what, no matter how crazy it may seem to anyone else or even my own mind, that invites other people. That's that hand that you were talking about. That's that invitation to, here I am, take my hand, step outside yourself and become something bigger. And it happens when people are willing to actually share in the way that you two shared today, with vulnerability and with openness and with authenticity. Because then the other person feels safe in that space of vulnerability. And it feels like they can say anything and not be judged for it.
Right. It's always the one thing we don't want to face, the one thing that we're most afraid of, that has the most impact for our own transformation of ourselves, but also our experience of the world, of our situation. And it's scary, but our fear is there to teach us something. It's something that we need to face, because it doesn't have to be suffering. It's there to open us up to like back to the chaos in an order conversation, back to the breakdown to breakthrough. It is, our fear is there to show us there's something else. It's like the pain. When we feel pain, it's there to teach us, stop. Like something's not working. You can't do this. It'll cause more pain. And it's like, that's what our nervous systems and our pain sensors are for. And fear has that same function, but it is when we see it and distinguish it as an opportunity. Every time we have fear, every time we have a breakdown, every time we have something terrifying, life-changing, tragedy, there's something that if we let it, that it can open up something that where we can be and cause and see something beautiful that wouldn't have been there. And it's when that tragedy strikes when we don't expect it is the most, there's the most opening for us to experience ourselves and just why we do what we do, why we are so blessed to be able to even have an opportunity to serve each other and to lift each other up. And, that's really what one day is about. It's, when we all show up to who we are truly, when we are our own authentic selves, what could we do when we show up in community? What diseases can we cure? What new spiritual collaborations can we have? What scientific discoveries could we make? What recipes could we have? And it's like, when we offer each other the space and the grace and just just actualize the golden rule, not just say, treat others how we want to be treated, actually do it, and actually just show patience and love and compassion and empathy, and for people, just, accepting them where they're at. And I think when we allow that, it just, the world gets more beautiful, because people are showing up. Or not just their fears and their survival, and they're trying to make it on top and just look out for themselves. It's like there's something bigger than just getting rich, getting famous, and getting a bunch of toys and then dying. There's something a lot more here than that. Just to get a lot of affirmation, and there's something bigger that that's the gift we have with our time, with our word, with what we do, with our actions, is how do we serve each other. And like, ultimately, when my neighbor's healthy, when my neighbor is safe and their family's safe, I'm safe, my family's safe. And we're so interconnected. And this COVID situation is only pointing to that. We have so much power when we actually recognize ourselves for who we truly are, and know that everything we do, every handshake or fist we extend, every smile or frown, every word we make, kept or broken, ripples and changes the course of the entire universe. That's how powerful you are. That's how powerful I am. That's how powerful we all are. And it's beautiful when we recognize ourselves for who we truly are. And I just want to thank both of you again, just for just spending the time to be with us, but just sharing your stories, your testimony, and your breaking through your tragedies and your difficulties and your obstacles to find something not only beautiful on the other side, but to be here to share it with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This has been fabulous.
Oh, it's been wonderful.
I really want to be conscious of both your time. We're a little bit over an hour now. So if you do you have a few more minutes? Do we have time for one last question, maybe? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you. So there was a question that came up a couple weeks ago on the show, about a week ago. I don't know. I don't keep track of time. Whatever. But it was also with two women, two very women who had really stepped into their voice and their truth. And there's a variation of the question that feels present now. In my experience, there's not a lot of room in Western society, in this world, for compassionate voices of women, voices from women. And growing up in that environment, I don't know what it was like for you guys, if you ever actually experienced being shut down just because you're a woman. But if you have, what was that experience for you, and what brought you to a place where you could actually speak again? And I think I'll let Debra go first, and then cherlyn, I'll let you have the final word, and we'll maybe close from there.
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of growing up with a very strong female family. My mother was very strong. My grandmother was way ahead of her time. So I had that luxury of learning that early on. But the times when I was partnered with another male physician who had a very different religious belief, where he believed women should be, that really became the challenge for me, because every day it became difficult and became very obvious that me being busier than him, earning more money than him, growing the practice faster than him, really became difficult for him. And he wasn't afraid of voicing it, but he was very passive aggressive about it. And I dealt with it for a very long time, because I didn't want to rock the water, because I didn't know what I would do if I did. And it was actually my husband who stuck up for me and said, you need to speak up for yourself, or you need to walk away. And when it came time for me to walk away and have to be honest with him about why I was leaving, instead of just saying, hey, I just have these really great ideas and I want to build this wonderful practice and you're not aligned with me, I put my big girl panties on and I said why I left and was very honest and raw about the conversations that were happening in the office. And it just wasn't appropriate or wasn't a healthy place for me or any other woman to be because of that. And I'm really proud that I was able to do that, because there was a time I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I just would have brushed it under the carpet and walked away and not said the truth. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Cherlyn.
Yeah, that's so good, Debra. Me too. I was I was raised in an environment where my voice was encouraged. And so when I was faced with an opportunity where I was another man tell me that my voice wasn't good enough, that then an imposter syndrome completely took over. And I continued to fight, and the thoughts of, I'm a fake, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't know what I'm doing, my message doesn't matter, who am I helping anyway? All of these lies, right, that I talked about before, were coming in, and I had to do my own work to fight off those things, to feel like just to overcome somebody touching that spot of my purpose and knowing, ooh, maybe I didn't hear my purpose correctly. Maybe I'm not in the right calling. And then it was other men that came alongside me, my husband and a couple other dear friends, who saw what this other man missed. He saw the gold in me. I call them my gold diggers because they just saw that treasure that's inside. And they were like, let me remind you of who you are. Let me remind you of who you are. Because here's the thing. One of my dear friends, Kimberly, is an artist. And when she paints something, she'll send me a text message of it. And sometimes I'll be like, well, what's that? Because I don't see what she sees. But the creator always has a perspective on what he or she created. And so our creator has a perspective on who we are. And if we're listening to somebody else, we're denying what the creator says that we are. And so I can listen to someone else. I can people please. I can do all of that stuff. And I can fall underneath that shame of looking for somebody else to be my approval. Or I can tap into what the creator says that I am. And I can find my acceptance and my value and my worth from somebody who gave it to me in the first place. And that is way more powerful than what any other person could ever say.
I had no earthly idea
Beautiful.
That question.
Wow.
Until now.
That was powerful. I don't mean to take the last word from you, but that just compelled me to share. I just wanted to share before we leave. I wanted to share a short poem with you that feels very, very relevant to just everything that came up. But I want to share it. I'm going to share this with you. Right. Oops. There we go. There it is. This is called Love of the World by Charlotte Tallmountain. For the love of a tree, she went out on a limb. For the love of the sea, she rocked the boat. For the love of the earth, she dug deeper. For the love of community, she mended fences. For the love of the stars, she let her light shine. For the love of spirit, she nurtured her soul. For the love of a good time, she sowed seeds of happiness. For the love of God, she drew down the moon. For the love of nature, she made compost. For the love of a good meal, she gave thanks. For the love of family, she reconciled differences. For the love of creativity, she entertained new possibilities. For the love of her enemies, she suspended judgment. For the love of herself, she acknowledged her own worth. And the world was richer for her. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing. I think it's been an incredible just conversation and share. I'm so it just warms up my heart just having you both here, sharing your story, sharing your just who you are. Thank you again. I'm looking forward to have both of you back with us. This has been such a special day and a special conversation. So thank you so much just for being here. Thank you.
It's our honor. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And also to our viewers, thank you for joining us. We extend and our open invitation and encourage you to share on the stage with us. You know, you have something that will contribute to us all. We want to hear your story. We want to hear your testimony. We want to hear what brought you here to, you know, to be in a space where you can, you know, contribute, you know, just point us all to something bigger than ourselves. We all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And, you know, that's kind of part, you know, of why we're here. And it's not possible with all of you. We couldn't do this without all of you sharing. And, you know, we want to invite you to be involved. And if you share on the stage, you can go to the website you see on the bottom of the screen. You have an opportunity to volunteer and help us at the front lines of this movement. But I want to share with you what our vision is, you know, what our one-day vision is. You know, is humanity rising in a connected world with each person's unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. That's why we're here, and we invite you to join us. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week. I love you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and until next time, one day is today. Take care, everybody.